All right, guys, we are going to start with our case study number 1, and I'm going to briefly read over the case study. This case study is talking about a principal who was out to eat at a restaurant, and one of the former students of her school named Molly was her server. And she noticed the name tag that she worked, she was a principal at County High School. And she asked the principal, hey, can I have a conversation with you? I used to go to the school, and the conversation was about her former Spanish teacher, Mr. Dave Moss, who had recently retired, but he was working back in the system as a substitute. And Molly described to the principal that there was an inappropriate relationship between her and Mr. Moss. It started out as just coming over to his house, hanging out. The relationship grew. He started to ask her to allow him to take photographs of her, and turned into group photographs. The photographs were inappropriate and sexual in content. And eventually, I think it said after she graduated, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that he stopped asking her to come over to take pictures. And Molly now has a relative who attends the school, and her relative, I think it was a cousin. Cousin shared with her that Mr. Moss had been asking her to come over, or asked if he could take pictures of her as well. Molly, so that's what Molly shared with the principal, but reiterated that she did not want to go public, or had no intentions of sharing this with anyone. She was embarrassed about the situation. And she also feared that possibly the photos of her may show up in public at some point in time. Molly thanked the principal for her time, and just wanted to make sure that no other young ladies would get hurt like she did when she was in school. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen because I have the questions here. Where are we at? So that we can go through the questions. Share.
Okay.
And then we'll just go through the questions one at a time and kind of get what we think. So the first question is, what do you do with this information as a principal? What would we do with this information? So
automatic is Title IX. So automatic, any sexual inappropriate relationship we have to report to the head HR person. And then also what I pulled in my answer was our board policy, like our rules of what we have to follow. So the interaction and relationships between staff and students must be based on cooperation, mutual respect, and understanding of appropriate boundaries between adults and students inside and outside educational settings. An employee should show, demonstrate good judgment and avoid the appearance where the interactions could be inappropriate. And then any inappropriate or otherwise heard violation of that constitute to a violation, and it should be reported. So that's what I talked to for number 1, that I would go ahead, take that information to HR due to Title IX, the law, and our board policy.
I mean, we are mandated reporters. So anything inappropriate relationships as teachers in the state of North Carolina, as well as being educators, we are mandated to report all persons who have caused suspect to any juvenile abuse, neglect, or independent, or has caused any harm. We are obligated to make this report. So definitely I agree with you, Sasha, going straight to HR, following protocol on what I have to do to report the situation. Especially that he is still in education. So he should be, I think that's the next question. So I'll let anyone else answer before we go there.
Yes, I agree also with both of your statements and your finding that the first thing that you do once that was reported is you need to report that to HR, because that's your license on the line if it comes out that you knew about it and you didn't report it to anyone.
For me, I know that it's supposed to be reported, and I will report it, but I struggle with it because it was 10 years ago. Like, I understand. Get down. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't know. I kind of feel like for me, it was a very awkward situation for you to tell me this. And it's been 10 years. Like, my question to her is, why didn't you tell somebody? And I'm not saying it's her fault. That's not what I'm saying. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate. Why 10 years later, is she only concerned about her cousin? Or, I mean, like, is she
That could have
thinking it's
probably
gonna
been the
happen again?
motivation. Like realizing that it is happening. Maybe then she didn't realize, you know what I'm saying? And then now that it hits close to home, and she
Mhm.
mentioned, I want to say like 3-4 times how mental health to her, like, I'm still struggling with this. I'm still struggling with
Right.
this. So she's still trying to figure it out herself. But what really happened to me? Is it my fault? Maybe, could be things, she's thinking herself. So I think knowing she's struggling that much with it at this time, 10 years later, and now seeing that it's her cousin and she don't want the same thing to happen to her cousin.
And for like us emotionally, that was a trigger. It happened 10 years ago. She could have very well, for her own mental to get through this, like put it out of her mind. Did this really happen? Was I wrong? Because when we're young and you have an older person, an adult, and you go, do you really think that it's wrong because it's an adult? Why would they hurt me? Why would they do something to hurt me? But then you think about, now it's my cousin, my 14-year-old cousin. So if this were to happen to her,
Right.
14-year-old person, does she deserve that? Like, what is she doing? And so it was a trigger, like, hey, in 10 years from now, I'm feeling this mental health and I'm struggling to get over it if it happens to my cousin and I didn't do anything about it. So now it's not really that she's about herself, but she is trying to figure out how she can keep this from happening to her cousin, and her cousin struggling 10 years from now if it does happen to her.
Yeah.
And if she did say, I don't want to come forward to say anything about me, I just don't want it to happen to someone else. So, it's not like,
And
oh,
she
I
said
want to
that
come,
too. I'm
I want to
embarrassed.
sue. Yeah, I want to sue somebody. I want to get something from myself. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. But I do see that as far as statutes of limitations. But my thought concept with this, and we can go to the next question, is if he did it then, several girls, he never got caught. And to me, predators, offenders like this, they don't stop. It wasn't just a one and done. There's probably hundreds of young ladies that he's done that to. And so let's go next question. Will Mr. Moss continue substituting? My answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're going to investigate. We're going to figure out exactly what's going on. And it's her cousin Molly. So that means it's recent that he has tried to get her to take the pictures, and he's still in substitute. That means he still has access to these young ladies.
Yeah, I agreed with that. I said, again, going with policy, HR, law enforcement, they'll conduct an interview with both the student and the staff, and obviously separate. And then the staff will be suspended without pay until the investigation is completed.
Right. So, and then in that case, like I say, he won't be substituting, but once I report, then it's out of my hands what happens. It's up to the county, the board, to say, okay, what he's not going to be doing. But I would request that he not be at my school, knowing what he has done or the possibility of what he has done.
Yeah, I agree too, but I would also once I reported it, it's now in the hands of HR, and they make the decision on if he's coming back to the building or not. But in most instances, they're not going to allow him to come back until there's a full investigation. But I'm also wondering, because of her age, would they turn this over to law enforcement and let them kind of handle it on their end?
I know on our, again, going back to my school, that the law enforcement is involved in that investigation, automatically, regardless of her age, that being that it's 10 years later, and then there's suspect of other kids being involved too.
All right, Principal Nyree, I see your brain. I see you got something.
No, because I guess I'm still stuck. I understand this is the law. I understand that once we report it, and I'm not against reporting it, so don't misunderstand me. My problem is, well, I won't say problem, but my concern is you're automatically assuming that this man is guilty. Automatically from the jump that this man is guilty because this child or former child said that he did X, Y, Z. She doesn't want to report it to anybody. So what happens if the cousin doesn't want to report it to anybody either, or doesn't want, they start to investigate and they won't talk. So there's a catch-22 with that. If they decide, or if the cousin decides she's not going to talk because the person who initially reported is not going to talk, they can't get him out of the school system because they don't have any proof. So if he actually is doing this,
it depends on the investigation. If they don't talk, but there's also other motives they can look into. Was there emails? Was there text messages? They're going over the house. Could they pull footage? If they get a warrant, depending on how their investigation goes, and they go in the house and he has, the pictures. So
you're basically saying that because they said what they said, that there's probable cause to investigate this man's personal life.
I feel if we have to report it and the police officers get into it, they're going to seek into it. I've had some cases at my school where there's comments on the bus and they explored it, and they ended up they found enough to show possibility, and they went to the house and then they found more evidence. So I just feel like, right now I know it's hypothetical case. We don't know, but I'm just giving out possibilities of what it could go to.
But
So
it's just our job.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It's just our job to report it. Like, it's not our job to, guilt or innocence as, teachers, our job is to protect and to report. It's just the same thing if a kid came up to us and said, coach, I'm thinking about suicide. Whether I believe them or not believe them, it's just my job to report it so that they can get help. It's up to the authorities to prove or disprove. Now, I understand what you're saying because you're dealing with someone's life. If I were to get accused of sexual harassment or something like that, whether or not they said I did it, my life is probably pretty much over in education, because everybody's going to look like, did she do it? And they just couldn't prove it. I definitely understand and I get that. But again, if someone were to say that I did that, another teacher is obligated to go and turn that information in. And then I would have to, at the same time, be like, I get, and hopefully, it wouldn't prove to be true and I could get off, but we know I might as well go ahead and apply a job at another county.
Yeah.
But it would be up, we have to report.
And then I think about the things that she told the principal, like she had like some vivid details on things with other students involved. And then she felt some type of way that when she graduated and became like 18, he just cut her off completely. Just like, done.
Right. And so, there's a lot of questions, but again, just by law, it's our duty to report. Let's say that she didn't report it, and something like that happened and it came out, guess who was going to get it?
You're going to be right there in a lawsuit because you knew.
So I think that we kind of also just tied into how will we handle this situation. We have different opinions about how we would handle as far as, reporting, not reporting. But I think, the bottom line is we have to go by what the law says that we have to do. And Ira, you got something else you want to add, or anyone else about how we would handle the situation? It's tough because even at the end, if we're to come out like he was innocent, that it didn't happen, and the student was, like, hey, you know what? I owe you an apology. Sorry, but I did what I had to do as far as me being obligated to the law and to the county of my job and what my position is. So last question, will you tell anyone, deal with the situation, or will you leave it alone? So again, I think we kind of,
at this point, we're required to tell someone. So the other questions are irrelevant because we've already stated you have to tell it. If it was told to you, you have to report it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think back to that, the whole, how it all started with, someone, when we go out and do something, hold on, I need to shut this door. As principals, we're almost celebrities in the community. It's like this, she didn't even go to school, it was 10 years ago. And she just saw that she had the logo on her shirt or a name tag. It's like, oh, I used to go to that high school and automatically wanted to have a conversation. I don't think that I would feel comfortable having a conversation. You know, I might have said, hey, here's my my business card. Give me a call. We'll set up an appointment to meet at school or something like that. You know, I think that I would have been hesitant at the beginning to even have that conversation with her because we have no idea. I mean, she surely probably did not think the conversation was going to go that way. It could have been about boosters. It could have been anything. But I think, you know, there you go. We have to be careful when we're going out, even wearing our school logo, because we're going to be approached by people and we have no idea what the conversation is going to be like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was very uncomfortable. When I read it, I personally would not have talked to her there. I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And I would have listened to what she had to say and say, hey, you know what? How about you come by my office, or, you know, somewhere that wasn't so personal. I mean, if you're out eating and they're serving you, that's just, to me, I'm on my personal time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, even if this conversation was, you know, what if she had a glass of wine or something and we're having this conversation? I mean, do we report like, yeah, I was out having dinner. I did have a glass of wine, but this conversation was had. You know, there's just so many different scenarios. And I just think that first of all, there's no amount of training. For me, I feel like that if, and when I'm a principal, somebody wants to have that conversation with me, like, okay, what do? You know, there's just no training. You have to handle it, you know, by the book, like
Right.
for a response to this woman out in public. And then, and my thought process is too, like, it's been 10 years, like, you need to get help. You know, like,
Yeah,
what do you
I
do
put
now?
that in my discussion too, like at the end, how do you handle it? Like I would, after I reported to HR and I talked to my direct supervisor, I would say, hey, like she said she's struggling with it. Is there community representatives or is there something we can say so she can get help? And say, yeah, I understand, you know, you don't want to say your name or come forth with it, but here's a place you can go. It's okay. You know, something like that is what I put in my discussion.
Right. I know it's tough, but hopefully, you know, we would hope that none of us have to deal with the situation, but I definitely believe if we're in education long enough, we're going to have a situation like this come across our desk.
Yeah, definitely. 'Cause I mean, like I said, for me, like I'm ahead of my department and I've seen like 3 cases already. And in my county, there was a couple cases. And some of the stuff, it was just like inappropriate. It wasn't a sexual relationship, but it was just inappropriate. Like, why are you with this kid out and like in public? Why kid at your house? Like things like that. And other teachers noticed it and they reported it. So there's like things like that that you see happening.
So let me ask you a question, because you were talking about kids being out with teachers and stuff.
Mhm.
I know, and I have colleagues or former colleagues who, once a child has left their class, they have a relationship necessarily with the parent, not a personal, I mean, not a romantic relationship or anything, but they're going out to the park together and they're doing whatever this thing is on your phone where you're finding whatever. I don't know. I can't even remember what it's called. It's real popular. You walk through the park.
Those
It was
geo
something
things,
about,
geo things. Is that what
Pokemon?
Pokemon? Where you go
Yeah.
find
yeah,
the
that's it. Pokemon.
Oh,
And-
Pokemon.
And so they go out and they do those kinds of things together, but that child is no longer in that teacher's class anymore. And they had the okay of the parent, but the parent is not always there when they're out with that child. I
Mhm.
went to one of my students' football games and built a relationship with his mom. His mom was okay with him going on outings with me and my family. So like, where is the line drawn where you want to build a relationship, be like a mentor for that child in addition to the parent, yet you're not, I mean, what's not okay with your county? That's what, I guess that's where my question is, because that just seems really, really strange. Like, is that
And
inappropriate?
Like how, well, you know, looks always can be deceiving too. So that's going to be another, you know, you're going to have like those people that are going to be, oh, I can't believe she's hanging out with a kid out. You know, you just know how staff are in general.
Mhm.
But I think being professional in it, like you saying with you and your family. So you, and I'm assuming you have kids. So you see what I'm saying? It's not just, okay, child. So you see what I'm saying? So that's like a family outing. It's professional looking. It's not looking like you and him, her, whatever, at the movies together. And you know what I mean? It's late at night or you're
Mhm.
seeing, you know, so I feel like it's how you conduct yourself and what you make that perception look like too is going to play in factor.
Right, you're right. Perception is reality. We just have to be careful of the situations that we are putting ourselves in and what it
Yeah.
looks like to, you know, to the community, because people are going to talk.
Yeah.
You know, people are always going to say, especially, you know, teachers. And again, like I said, as a principal administrator, man, they are just looking, we are under microscopes. Everybody, you know,
Right.
sometimes
Definitely.
everybody's waiting for you to do something to fall.
mess
Some
up
people
and-
just want to
yeah.
see you fail. All right, we're gonna wrap it up, guys. I got the little message that we are running out of time. So
Yep.
if anyone wants to say anything to kind of wrap it up, go for it. But I think that we answered all the questions. I think we had a pretty good discussion. I definitely appreciate all the different opinions and that we're able to kind of talk through and process and respect everyone's, you know, questions and answers. Right, well, I'm gonna end it here. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, have a good
All right.
one.
I
You
stopped the
too.
recording. We're good. So once I get home, I'll YouTube it and email it out to everybody. Nairi, you want it to your Gardner Web or your Gmail?
You can send it Gardner Web because that way I can just copy it
Forward
and
it.
send it to them. Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye. So cute. Oh my gosh, girl. You're so cute.